I personally believe that with this brand new 3-on-3 league founded by Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart and various others, I believe that Unrivaled basketball changes the way we play basketball forever. Nationers, welcome back to another episode of The Realest Podcast, episode 70. It feels weird because obviously last week we had episode 69, we're in 70. We're only 30 episodes away from 100, which it feels like maybe a long time coming. I know in the early stages of this podcast, we were cranking them out, and they've kind of been maybe sprinkled around week by week throughout the past few years, and I'm really grateful, for this opportunity to at least speak my mind, share things that I'm really passionate about, things that I feel like could be better in this world, or different things like sports or music, things that I enjoy. And today, Nationers, is no different to that. I do want to thank you guys again so much for watching, listening, viewing, and of course, subscribing if you guys haven't already. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you guys are listening, make sure to, I don't know how that works on the audio platforms, but leave a rating. Whatever rating, I'm not going to ask for a 5-star rating. If you feel like this podcast is like a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, give it a proper rating. That I want an honest review, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, great to see you guys here, back at it for episode 70 of The Realest Podcast. Banner is right behind me. Forgot to say that. But super grateful to be back. We're here for episode 70. I have kind of like a new league that I want to talk about in Unrivaled. But of course, we're about to hit the Super Bowl. We're about to hit the championship games. Actually, as of today, there will be championship games being played. And so we're going to find out who goes to the Super Bowl in, I believe, 2 weeks. And then, obviously, I think there's usually a Pro Bowl week. There's all the honor stuff that kind of happens in that period of time. So, on top of that, it's going to be a great few weeks in here of sports. But as for me, I have a package coming. I made the grave mistake, and I know when I ordered this on Amazon, I ordered track spikes, a phone stand for this podcast, so I can have something so I'm not looking over my phone. I also ordered a sander for these lockers onto the side here because I actually want to clean these up. I want to do my best to make sure that they maybe look good. I'll probably scrap, I think, 2 of them maybe. We'll see. I'm not entirely too sure about that as of now. I'll probably scrap 2 of them. I mean, it is kind of nice for storage, so I'll find something for them, but I know I want to transform one into something cool. And then I also want to keep one for storage because these 2 are used for storage. So the ones off to my right are used for storage for like various things. And so it is kind of nice having them here, but they obviously do take up a lot of space and they're very big. So I ordered a sander for those. On top of that, I ordered one of those earwax cameras. I wanted one for Christmas. I ended up not getting it. And so then I was like, you know what? I'll just buy it myself. I have really bad earwax because I wear headphones a lot. And so I needed one. And the videos will look kind of cool, so maybe I'll make a little video out of it. And then on top of that, I also ordered a 64-ounce steel insulated water bottle. My girlfriend got me a water bottle for Christmas that's also 64 ounces. It is plastic, so it sweats a lot. So I guess I wanted one that was steel, so if I'm by my computer, I won't have to worry about that. But if I'm at track practice, I at least have one to be ready with, if that makes sense. So I just needed one that was not going to sweat. And it's not her fault by any means. I know when she had saw it, she passed by it and was like, oh, that's one of the things that he wanted on his Christmas list. Got it. And I didn't think about it as well that oh, plastic's probably going to sweat. And so she got it for me. I've had maybe a few issues with it sweating, especially when I put a lot of ice into it. And I just don't really want that. So I ordered one of the same company because I like the nozzle. It's one of those ones that has a flip top. It has a little nozzle and I really like the nozzle. And so I bought the same company, just the steel insulated ones. And that to me has worked wonders. So with that, Amazon order is coming in a few weeks because there was one thing in the settings when I'm coming up with the order. I'm making sure that I don't care what packaging it comes in, because sometimes Amazon will be like, hey, just bundle it all into one box, or if it's a gift, then make it look discreet. I myself made the brave choice to just, I don't know where the setting was or if I just didn't change it, but to put it all into one box. That's not what I wanted. So it probably will be a gift box on February 6th to February 20th. There's a 2-week window there. I'm kind of just having to take the L on that. There was one item that was going to take forever. 4 of the 5 items were going to show up today, January 25th. And then there was going to be one that showed up in a month. But apparently, one of the settings that I had, they're all going to come into the same box. So that'll be a fun day. Luckily, none of it is I need it right away. I'm sure it would be nice to get on these lockers sooner than later. The phone stand for the podcast is more of just a convenience thing. The track spikes, that's kind of fun. I just recently took a job up at the high school that I went to for a track coach. And so, doing jump coaching, sprint coaching, all of that stuff. So I am a coach now at the school, which is kind of fun. So I haven't done any paperwork yet. I got the offer of the job, I think, on Thursday. There was just a few things that they needed to do. So it was supposed to happen sooner. We had to kind of prolong a few things. So then I ended up getting a call on Thursday. And then next week sometime, I'll probably fill out all the paperwork and make it official. So that'll be a super fun gig. I know some of you guys are like, whoa, don't you like content and whatnot? There is kind of a fun thing for me. It still keeps me active, keeps me going. On top of that, it's only about 2.5 hours per day, maybe on Saturdays. And of course, the various Wednesdays, things will go a little longer, but nonetheless, it's going to be a ton of fun. And most importantly, I enjoy it. It's something that I really enjoy. I mean, I obviously get paid for it, so that's also great. My time is valuable, at least. And so, yeah, I took this job. I at least put a word out in November that I'd want it. I applied in early December, and then obviously now things are kind of moving in the right direction. So, yeah, went in for an interview, I think, on the 6th, and then I was supposed to hear a call back by the 8th. Like I said, some things kind of happened with various people. Not a bad way, but just making sure hey, everyone's heard about this interview, myself, and, it goes down the chain of hiring. And so we ended up getting that all sorted out. On Wednesday, I missed a call, and then Thursday, we were all good. So, yeah, I took that, and that's going to be fun. And so sports is something that I really enjoy. It's something that I love doing, partaking in, especially basketball. Now, I know that I said that I just took a coaching job for track, but I also love playing basketball. The past 2 years, we were playing in Hoop Fest. When I graduated high school, I played in Hoop Fest with my best friend James and a few others. And then on top of that, there is a brand new league introduced called Unrivaled. And I personally believe that with this brand new 3-on-3 league founded by Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart and various others, I believe that Unrivaled basketball changes the way we play basketball forever. I know that's saying a lot, but hear me out. This new league, founded by 2 amazing players. Actually, they played in the finals, which is kind of a fun storyline. They were the first matchup in this league, and obviously eyes are going to kind of be on it. If you follow women's basketball, you will know that the Minnesota Lynx and obviously the Liberty, they went head to head. They went to game 5. That game 5 was very controversial. But then on top of that, Nafisa and Brianna are both the founders of Unrivaled. Now, this has actually got a lot of funding from other athletes like KD, Kevin Durant, that is, Coco Gauff. There's been a lot of maybe investors. There's been even a lot of advertisements with Sephora. There's been Samsung. There's been a bunch of different companies that have kind of attached themselves to this. It's not like the XFL where it's kind of just a minor league, or the UFL. I believe they've all merged, so I don't know what it's formally called right now. But what I'm trying to say is this isn't a minor league to the WNBA, where you're going to get maybe people that aren't able to make a roster, they could still get game time, almost like a G League is to the NBA. Now, a lot of teams will have maybe the end of their benches, people that aren't going to see a whole lot of time go down to the G League so they could still get game time and they could still actually work on their craft. Unrivaled, especially with the WNBA schedule that runs from May through October, a lot of this offseason, a lot of players will actually go overseas. They'll go to Russia. That's why Brittany Griner, I'm sure you guys know the story and maybe you've heard of her because of it. She was actually over in Russia because of offseason things. And so she's not the only player. There's a bunch of other players. I think now is maybe a little bit better, especially with top star players coming out of NCAA and actually spending 3 years there, growing their brand. And now with NIL deals, they're making a lot of money. And so if they maybe use it wisely, maybe they pay for the apartment that they're in, maybe if it's a house, if they have enough money and want to spend it on that, then they'll generally be okay. But there are players in the WNBA that didn't have NIL deals. They weren't able to make that money, even if they are a bigger talent. Now, yes, of course, people sign shoes. They sign advertisement deals like with CarMax. They obviously have a bunch of different ways of making money now, especially through like sponsorships, general sponsorships of the athlete. Unrivaled is a league meant for United States off-season games. Now, I know a lot of leagues, especially overseas, are more like a full-on league. It might be 28, 30 games. This one is a 14-game, 7 weeks, so you're playing 2 games a week. It's a super fun. It's super jam-packed. I think they have like a single day off between, because if there's, so let me explain the format, and I'll explain how maybe that works, but maybe it's not super important. So, in this format, it's a 3-on-3 basketball league. There are 7 3-minute quarters, and after that, they go to a fourth quarter where it's a winning score. So the one thing that I love about this is you'll add 11 points. Let's say it's 70 to 65, right? You're down by 5. It's going to be plus 11 from the highest total of 70, the highest scoring team. So they have to get to 81. You also have to get to 81. So you can mount a comeback. I seen this in the very first game. Like, it was super intense. I don't know all the teams and who's who, but I know Brianna Stewart's team was like ahead. They seemed like they were probably going to dominate. They have like one of the best teams in the entire league. And they lost to the Miss with Nafisa's team. Nafisa's like a great two-way defender or two-way player. So very good on offense and very good on defense. And just so happens that she's surrounded by people very much like that. And especially in a 3-on-3 setting, you're going to have to play some defense. Like, you can't just be really good at offense and hope that like people can support you in that sense. Like, people are going to switch on to you. This whole format is like so different because like 5-on-5, you can at least rely on 2 other people to help you. This one, it's 3-on-3. It's like Olympic style, NBA, and of course, even FIBA. FIBA's 3-on-3. So you get a winning total, and the great thing about that is it's a walk-off. Like, you might hit a dagger 3, you might hit like a free throw 2. So the free throws are different. If you get fouled shooting a 2, it's a single free throw for 2. If you get fouled shooting a 3, same thing. If you make it, you get 3 points. And ones are still the same. So if you get if you score a 2 or score a 3 and get fouled, it's just you then go to obviously the free throw line and score an additional point. So things are super quick. Things are super amazing in the flow sense of things. The walk-off format is ridiculously fun because if a game is close and they're shooting 2s, maybe a 3 to seal it, like, that's a great clip. In the world of social media, that's great. Like Skylar Diggins-Smith, walk-off 3 to win the very first game. And then not only that, she won their second game with walk-off free throws, which you could say is maybe partially a downside, but every system, every format's going to have their pros and cons. I don't think changing the free throws, it just so happens that that is more for the format and the flow of the game, that it just so happens that if that happens at the very end of the game, it happens. You know, a lot of times you'll see NBA teams, and maybe in that format, trying to foul so that they get 2 free throws, hope to miss one. But also, you have to think about it, if there is a high risk, high reward, because if you miss the free throw, then you don't get any points. You know what I'm saying? So there is a opposite side to that. So again, the 3 quarters, 3 7-minute quarters, very quick, by the way. It only will take about an hour depending on how that fourth quarter goes. I think they kind of bank that the 3 quarters will go by pretty quick. It's going to be 21 minutes. You're going to have a few there hasn't been too many advertisements in the middle, which is kind of great. Halftime takes up like a good chunk of like 10 minutes with like ads on both sides. So that's kind of fun. So there's not much breaks. There's not much of like things going on where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just going to scroll through like Instagram. Like I'm kind of like locked in. Even if they're scoring, even if like the gameplay is slightly different and it's enhanced, it's more intense and it's quicker paced, a shorter court. Like, yeah, people are going to smoke a layup. People are going to airball. That happens in any league anyways, but getting things kind of just broken up by an ad or different things, it is kind of rough. And I know the NBA, for me, that's been my kind of gripe. And so it's great to see in a new league where there's a lot of eyes that maybe not going down that route. And maybe I'm wrong. Like, I feel like the flow is great. The balance, there's a healthy balance between it. Because like sometimes a quarter in the NBA, it's going to go by 30 minutes, 40 minutes for like a gosh dang quarter to go by. It like a single quarter. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, I understand it's a long game. I understand that. But I feel like the NBA has very much gotten into this money-hungry league where they want to try and monetize and sponsor everything, that they're not really prioritizing the viewership of it. I think they're hoping that viewers will just adapt, but we know that is not the case. I know a lot of people are going to blame it on the 3-ball. People are going to blame it on like fouls. I mean, there's a various combination of it. It's a gift basket. It's like my Amazon order. There's going to be a bunch of different things that don't make sense, but in the game of basketball, they make a lot of sense. And so, yeah, the flow with Unrivaled is great, especially with the quarters. There's an 18-second shot clock. There's a 12 for offensive rebounds. So, like, when that happens, you get the ball, you got to go. Obviously, when you get a rebound, you have a little bit of time, but you can't really play with your food too much. You have to at least get up a shot. And then on top of that, there's only 36 players. So this is one of the things that I really enjoy, because for myself, like the WNBA, like I'm very aware of like some of the bigger names in even this league, of course, but the WNBA, obviously, I know a lot of people are just watching the WNBA for Caitlin Clark and maybe the various teammates of hers, people that played even on the Iowa team like Kate Martin. But the big part about it is that even in the NBA, I don't know like everyone, but I know like as I continue to watch, I learn new people. I know where they're going. Like I know that Nick Richards, like he was playing on the Charlotte Hornets. Now he just got traded to the Suns. I recognize that name now. And there's some people out there that just like know like the most randomest person in the NBA. Kudos out to you. There's 400 plus people. You're not going to know everyone, but the fact that you know like depth, that is great. The one thing that I love, there's 6 teams of 6 players. So there's 36 people in total. They obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but they get equity in the league. So as the league grows, their pockets grow in a maybe lighthearted way. There are, like I said, there are 9 weeks of round robin play. I believe all of that with 14 games. There's a 4-team playoff. So that's super great. 36 players is not a whole lot for a league, but for a 3-on-3, it makes a lot of sense. Like if you had only 36 people in an entire league for 5-on-5 basketball, you have about 7 teams with like 1 being a bench player. So let's say you'd have 6 teams with everyone having at least a bench player in that case. Pretty much. 1 team would not, but the big thing about that is that you get to see these players that maybe you're kind of familiar with and you get to grow with, like Kayla McBride. Like she's been on fire. She's my MVP for this league so far. Like she just puts the team on her back, big time scorer. And I get to watch that. I get to see that live. I don't care. Like, I think people will dog and find ammunition in ways of like the shooting, Angel Reese's layup package, things of that nature. And then obviously just like the layups are a lot different between the men's and women's side. And so it is maybe a harsher watch on the eyes when you are watching. You're like, how did you smoke that? Or like the shots just kind of like chucked up. It's an ever-evolving game. I'm hoping that obviously as the years come, things will kind of generally get better too, especially with more reps. These are still very talented basketball players. Like, believe me or not, the worst NBA player is better than everyone on the planet. For the most part. Every non-NBA player on the planet. You know what I'm saying? And so I love the format with the player size. You get to just learn more about these players. Like the WNBA is like had a huge spotlight shined onto it this last year. And it just so happens that maybe a lot of them really aren't media prepared or maybe had an idea of this magnitude. And I think that with Unrivaled, it gives us as a viewer an opportunity to learn more about these players, the big stars, the people that are obviously on these teams. And you get to kind of learn a little bit more about them, like maybe what team they are playing on, or if they're in free agency. So that's kind of coming up. Like that will be happening mid Unrivaled. So that'll be pretty interesting. And then on top of that, I think they've done a great job with their marketing on social media. I think maybe a little bit. The hard part is that there is like full game highlights that get posted on Bleacher Report and House of Highlights. And those are all great, but the hard part about those that I find is that they're just like the biggest plays. And so it's just like it's just background noise. And that's really hard. I watched, I think, 4 or 5 games of just like full highlights. I want to see like how these games went. They're not doing much with their thumbnails. And so I think that's not helping them in a way. Like it's nice to see like, oh, like who won the game, how it happened, and obviously just some of the big plays. But yeah, it's it becomes a little bit more a background noise, unfortunately, because really there's nothing at stake. And that's kind of the hard portion of it. Because it's a weird blend, like the commentary with maybe somebody being like the third person to that. And obviously the gameplay, you know, maybe not matching up to what they're saying and like cutting off. And so it feels weird. It's a really hard format for others to enjoy that maybe didn't watch the game. I guess it is kind of nice. I mean, I'm sure people out there enjoy it, but for myself, I've really enjoyed this format. The one big thing, again, the WNBA has shined a big spotlight in this last year and only will continue to be that. I know a lot of people have criticized that everything feels like it's like good and jolly and there's a lot of praise. And I think that that's great, especially in the early goings. Like I really hate when like we're at draft night, that should be a very positive moment. And we should like be celebrating these young men and women's like time that got them there. And it just so happens that I think people have a narrative that they want to continue to spin where you're going to shine a negative light. I know Brandon Miller, he's had some off-court things. Jalen Carter, maybe I've been a little bit critical of him because of his involvement with like a racing crash, especially after the national championship parade. And then that obviously ended in a death of 2 people closely related. I mean, he's been tearing it up, and that's kind of the hard part, you know, like you see things like that and it's like hard not to think about it because you know about it. And sure, I think that you can still conflate 2 different ideas. You can distinctly be like, okay, that happened, but also like him as a basketball player, you know, and that kind of gets hard. A lot of that kind of wedges in, but I feel like there is maybe a little bit too much praise in Unrivaled. And I, again, I'm more on the side of like praising a new idea, something that is fleshed out with like a great format. Things have been thought out. There is a side to it where and this is just me, I think people are giving unnecessary criticism and negativity towards something because that sells. And there's not a backbone behind that. People are going to criticize. Giannis said this. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he says, like, man, one day they're going to say they're the greatest person on this planet at basketball. And then the next you're going to get blown out. And they're like, man, he needs to leave the team. He wants out. Like, what'd you just mean? Like, yesterday you thought I was the greatest player on this planet. There's a lot of switch up. There's not a lot of backbone in sports media, in my opinion. I think there's a very select few people that will like be on point and like things will be consistent. Like I think you can be critical of someone's game while also praising what they do. Like how do they, as like, if you're an expert, you are a former basketball player, you know, you have to balance this. Like, yeah, this is not working. If I were this is what I would do differently. Or like some people are like, man, I'm going to maybe riff here. The Inside the NBA, it's a great show. There's a lot of good laughs. I think Ernie Johnson does a great job. There are aspects to that are very unwatchable for me. Like very, very unwatchable for me. And it's not like the bickering, talking over each other and like people like being like, oh, that's not what you just said. Like I understand that that's just kind of part of the banter, the show, the format. What I don't like is that exact thing where like one day you're going to be like, yeah, they need to keep him. They need to find out like what's working. They need to try and fix this. To then the very next game that you're covering, nah, man, it's not working. You gave it 2 days. You know what I'm saying? Like you gave it less than a week of time. What changed? And maybe very small times like that will be correct, but I don't like the switching up. I don't like just like fitting the narrative for how it feels at that moment. We live in a world where very long-term visions and long-term analytical presences are not a thing that we live in sports media. I want to become a sports commentator one point in my life. I would love to do that. And right now, especially because that's something that I really want to do, I maybe am indifferent about that short-term like vision that they have for a team. Like I think when it comes to we'll just say like the Bengals, right? The Cincinnati Bengals had a rough start to the season. They went like very bad. Like it was very, very bad. They needed to win pretty much every game up from a certain point to even make the playoffs. They were so close. They didn't make it. And so some people are going to be like, just pack it in for the season. Pack it in. Some teams are just going to really stink. You know what I'm saying? Like if you felt like a decision was really bad and like extending Daniel Jones while also franchising Saquon Barkley because you didn't want to pay him, then that is a very fair criticism. But just because a team is struggling, it was like still close in games, but just couldn't get it, or they just didn't have the ball and their defense is their weakness. So then when the other team got the ball, they just drove it down and they scored. That's not like them being like they suck. There's an aspect around them that sucks. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that whole offense is what kept them in these games. It just so happens that the defense sucks. So it's not the offense's fault. You can still distinguish that like the entire team doesn't suck. And so we conflate a lot of things. There's a lot of short-term visions within sports, and I really dislike that. I think that we can be encouraging, especially because like there's already enough negativity in this world where like people are going to bicker. We all read the comments. Twitter's a hellfire. Instagram's always got something political going on. There's a lot of different things in this world. Sports is one of those things where I'm sure a lot of people just want to relax. They want to watch something competitive. The refs maybe are a little bit too poignant on their own decisions, teeing up somebody for hanging on the rim that really isn't like hanging on the rim. These baseless calls that don't make sense. And what I mean is that in Unrivaled, I've just felt like there's a lot of praise. It's fine to criticize. I mean, it's a new league. I mean, a lot of these people haven't played like years of basketball together. The chemistry is very new. It's very fresh. And so I understand that criticism isn't going to be there, but I think we can be like, hey, like I enjoyed one point that somebody made, like, hey, there's only 14 games. Like being down like 0-3 it's not a good look. Like I think that they can bounce back. I think that blank needs to happen for that to be positive. But it's not impossible, if that makes sense. Like we're not counting them out. We're not saying that they're going to go on this mega run, but there is a point where like, yeah, I mean, they've still been in these games. Like if they're getting blown out, then that's maybe something to worry about. But if they're right in there, like there's a very rational praise to criticism distinction. And I guess in general, sports criticism is very short term. You're the best player, and then they're like saying he needs to find a new home or she needs to find a new home. It's not working. All that to say is that, again, I think the player exposure is nice. With the NBA, and especially with Unrivaled format, the NBA has really struggled with their ratings. And it just so happens that the NBA All-Star voting just came in. So that means the NBA All-Star game is going to be happening this next February, I think right after the Super Bowl, maybe like the 23rd, 26th, usually around that period of time in Oakland, one of the greatest basketball franchises. Technically, it's in the Bay Area, so I don't know if it's exactly in Oakland, but it's basically where the Warriors play. It's going to be a fun weekend. There's obviously a bunch of fans there already. And on top of that, the NBA All-Star game over the past few years has not really been competitive. And I understand that because am I just getting invited to like All-Star weekend and that's it? Like, I don't want to get hurt. I have like a whole portion of the season to go. That's not super fun. These are a few ways that I feel like I could, if I were the owner, if I were the commissioner of the NBA, and I'm coming up with an idea, I would do a 3-on-3 tournament. A lot of people are going to say do one-on-ones, like people are going to be super competitive. Sure. That might be a little bit too extreme because we're going 5-on-5 to 1v1. Like I think a lot of people just want to see 1v1, but I don't think a whole lot of people are going to try. I don't think people are seeing the foresight of that. A lot of people are still not going to try. And that's usually not too fun. I don't think any All-Star during All-Star Weekend is going to try, unless it's like some of the Skills Challenge or various other events like the dunk contest. The hard part is the buy-in by the players. We've had a lot of 5v5 games just go ballistic. 180 points there, 90, 200 points last year, 211 to I think like 186. That's a lot of points. That is so much points. And I know a lot of people will say that it is maybe not competitive. People may be living in that era, in that mindset of that it needs to be competitive. Like we voted you in, we want to see like a show. You have to realize that there is a portion of these players that really do not care. They want to stay healthy throughout this week. Everyone else is probably on vacation. They're getting their body right. They're tuning up. And then after this, going into March and April, because that's the final like quarter, maybe even third of the season, hey, I need to be healthy. And it just so happens that with all of that said, I would propose a 3-on-3 tournament with a similar format. I don't think the court needs to be any shorter. If it is, fine. I think shorter is probably the better because you still get people that are going to be competitive. They're going to still set screens. You know, they're not just going to go up and chuck shots. Like, you still have maybe 24 people being a part of it. You have starters that are maybe all separated onto like different teams, if that's possible. You'd have either 8 teams of 3, which I think is a little bit too much because then you have no depth, or 4 teams of 6 and you have like a longer format. So what I was thinking is the bracket style where you go boom, boom. And then you have super short, like 6-minute quarters, and then the top 2 teams with the most points. So you'll play technically everyone. So it's a group play, actually. You'll play everyone. After that, the top 2 teams with the most points after that will then play each other for the championship. And that there'll maybe be like a half in there or something. I don't know. So everyone plays everyone, group stage. And then from there, the top 2 teams go up. And especially with a point format where like the top 2 teams with the most points combined out of all 3 of their games go, that means that you would probably want to score a lot, but you'd also want to play defense. And so the hard part is like getting them to play defense. Are they going to play defense? Probably not. The biggest thing for me is that either you have All-Star Weekend, kind of like the Pro Bowl in the NFL, where you have it after the East-West Conference Finals, and then you have the Pro Bowl, technically the All-Star Weekend after that, and then you have the finals the week after. So if you were to make the finals and you just wouldn't be a part of All-Star Weekend, you would still get voted in, but then there would maybe be somebody else just filling your spot, just like the Pro Bowl. They do this all the time. I like that format because people are in the offseason. They're maybe not so worried about getting injured in season. This whole format where they're doing bracket style in the NBA, this tournament, I think it kind of makes sense. I'm not super privy to it. I think it'll be fun to just see different people playing with each other, which is kind of nice. But I don't know if it's a permanent thing. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but a lot of people have been very critical that every year it's changed. Well, yeah, because the year prior, the format prior to it wasn't that great. And it just so happens that if you are going to continue to make changes, you'll have to settle on one that works. And then in 2-3 years, you're going to understand it. It's going to be the exact same format. But it just so happens that without any defense, without, much competitive nature, All-Star Weekend, especially the game, is kind of just like background noise. I like it because I like to see like where people are shooting from. Like I'm always locked in All-Star Weekend as a basketball fan, but for the very casual fan that even I am at times, sometimes it is just background noise. And so I would like to see maybe a 3-on-3 tournament, getting some people some playtime. You try different lineups, of course. The hard part is like making sure that everyone plays. That's, I think, the big issue, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would love to see a 3-on-3 tournament because it's a new format. People are going to have to try and play both sides of the ball very well. And so I feel like there's something there. You still have like the draft, especially if you have 4 teams of 3. I mean, if there are 10 starters, I guess one team would also have an additional starter. I mean, that's okay if you were to ask me, but that's just me. Nonetheless, speaking of the NFL, there is the Super Bowl. There's championship games coming up. Obviously, we just talked about how Unrivaled, I think, just kind of changed with the equity, with maybe even the All-Star format. But I know I've kind of alluded to like the Pro Bowl. That's kind of fun. It's always generally okay. That's been on a downtrend for myself in recent years. I mean, I feel like we've been kind of stagnated as like an NBA sports fan, NFL sports fan. There's been a lot of stagnation within like the viewership of these things, like the All-Star weekend or just general game viewership. Pro Bowl for me is one of those odd ones because like I saw like no coverage of it last year, like on any socials. And I hate that everything's on like a different platform. I was very critical of like streaming platforms when they came out. I think streaming is great for like even like a college student because you're probably not going to get cable. But the thing is that if it's going to be shown on cable and also with streaming, the hard part about it is that like you're going to have to buy like 8 different things, and that by the time is going to be what it is to watch on cable anyways. I was very critical early on in the streaming era of the price tag that would come with it. Like obviously Netflix has always been kind of inflating their price over and over, and so that's been kind of rough, and that obviously just falls down to the viewer because what you need to maintain things. I mean, I understand somebody not losing their job, but hey, 200 people being laid off versus like 300 million people being able to like pay a certain price. I think there's a weight that you change there. You know what I'm saying? So all that to say is that even some of the festivities that happen in NFL, I like saw nothing about the Pro Bowl last year. Like I couldn't even find it on YouTube. That's how far like it was just removed. Like I just never found anything about it. And so I've always loved the Pro Bowl. I think it's a super fun weekend that is for a lot of NFL fans like myself. Earlier this year, before the season started, I sent out my predictions on who I think is going to win every division, how that's going to be stacked up, and then on top of that, who is going to win every award besides the executive award, because I didn't actually know that was a thing. So I think I did all right, and I'm going to share the results on how we did because this is quite something. Let me tell you that. This is going to be a tough scroll. You know what? I wonder if I could do it like this because I have this side by side on my PC. That's going to be so rough. You know what? We're going to rock with it. So I predicted in the AFC East that Miami would win it. Buffalo, Jets, New England. How that actually went was Buffalo, Miami, Jets, New England. Yeah. I was pretty all right with that. I was one off. Like I just flip-flopped spots, which you'll kind of see as the trend for a lot of this because like Miami, they lost Tua. They lost Tua for a handful of weeks. I don't think they still would have won it because the Buffalo Bills were actually a lot better than I would have thought. But it just so happens that, Buffalo won it. Miami, Jets, New England. For the AFC North, I predicted that the Bengals, Baltimore, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh would be the order. Bengals obviously doing really well. Baltimore always kind of being like second to that. Cleveland, all right. I thought Pittsburgh was not going to be very good, especially with a brand new quarterback. How it actually went was Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Bengals, Cleveland. So that one probably has the most chaos and disorder in the rankings. The Bengals, obviously, wow, that defense is rough. Baltimore did a lot better than I would have thought, only having like one primary receiver with 2 tight ends. They did a lot better than I would have thought. Pittsburgh also did really well. I mean, they were really off to a hot start with Justin Fields and obviously Russell Wilson there as well. So that was a big shocker. The AFC South, I believe I got this so super close. I had Houston, Jacksonville, Indiana, and Tennessee. It actually went Houston, Indiana, Jacksonville, Tennessee. So I just flipped Jacksonville and Indiana, and that was Good on them. The hard part is I looked at these and I don't think I got any of them right. Like none of them like boom, 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 boom. So maybe I'll find out. But from my recollection, I do not think that there was any. So yeah, Houston won. Jacksonville, I don't know what, especially with Trevor Lawrence down. I mean, I think they had the potential to also go decently far. Indiana surprised me. They're always kind of like a wild card prospect in the AFC. So yeah, I thought they were going to do a lot worse, but then also Tennessee did god awful. On top of that, in the AFC West, the final division here, we have KC, the Chargers, the Raiders, and Denver. So KC obviously won it. The Chargers, Denver, and then the Raiders. So the Raiders and Denver's just switched. That's it for that. KC, obviously, I thought were going to do well. The Chargers, they like lived up to that expectation of like new coach. Let's get Justin Herbert, what he needs. On top of that, Denver also did a lot better than I thought. I watched those first few Bo Nix games where he was like throwing interceptions in the triple coverage. And I was like, he's making like good reads and the passes are good, but like the decision making to do that isn't there. And so that came on pretty late in the season and they ended up getting a wild card spot, which is really cool. So for this, in the NFC East, I had Philadelphia, Dallas, Washington, and the Giants. Washington down just switched, so it was the Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants. And so, yeah, Dallas, they didn't have Dak Prescott. He had an injury. I don't remember what it was. I thought it was his leg, but maybe it was his wrist, like his throwing hand, and he wasn't able to obviously throw. I don't remember what his injury is. I know he had the ankle a few years ago, and that was pretty bad. But this, I thought Washington was not going to be great, but they turned out, it's going to be them and the Eagles. That's going to be super cool this today, technically, as this is coming out. So, yeah, I think Dallas probably would have done decently well if they had a quarterback, though. I think it would have still been the same with Eagles, Commanders, Cowboys, and Giants. So, there is that. On top of that, the NFC North, I had Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, and Minnesota. That ended up being Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, Chicago, and pretty much that Minnesota, Green Bay, and also Detroit, like those could have fluctuated depending on any of the games that were pretty close. Like Detroit also could have had a few more wins. Minnesota lost a few games that they definitely should have won. Green Bay also lost to Chicago late into the season. Chicago did a lot worse than I would have thought. It was kind of like they started off great, and I was like, oh man, they might actually be decently okay, but they ended up really struggling towards the back half of the season. So Green Bay, yeah, Minnesota, I thought that they were not going to do well, but that was a huge shocker. That was the big, big, big surprise. So there's that. NFC South, we had the Falcons, the Bucks, the Saints, and the Panthers. That ended up being the Bucks, the Falcons, Carolina, and then New Orleans. So basically 1-2 switch and 3-4 switch, which I'm pretty happy about. Like even Tampa Bay and the Falcons came down to the last game. Carolina turned it on towards the back end of the season, which is super cool. And that's the thing. Like I talked about the sports commentary and like people being negative, like, man, Bryce Young, man, he sucks. I think you have to give people the right setting for them to thrive. A plant that needs sunlight won't thrive where there is no sunlight, if that makes sense. And so just having the right weapons, having the right coaching, making sure that he's dialed in, that's the big thing. Like Michael Penix, he did great, especially when he stepped in. I think he has a bright future in Atlanta. New Orleans, without Derek Carr for a few games, and then obviously even the back half of the season as well. He's been injury-ridden this entire season. That's been a really rough season. Their depth at quarterback is rough. So I don't know what they do. I'm sure they need to get like a really good backup. On top of that, we have the final one. This one I pretty much had but one team, the 49ers. One of those teams that I think everyone thought was going to do decently well, and injury after injury after injury. That was rough. 49ers, Rams, Seahawks, Arizona. Just basically put the 49ers from 1 to 4. And that was that rating, I believe. Yeah. I believe Arizona had a better record than the 49ers, if I'm not wrong. Because they got eliminated like very late into the season. So the 49ers and Cowboys both got eliminated. I think that's correct. Let me check what I have here because I know that I wrote that. Yeah. Yep. Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals, 49ers. And that was that. I also then had the Chiefs winning the AFC, which is still very possible. Detroit winning the NFC. They were one and done, which kind of sucks. And then Detroit winning the Super Bowl. That's what I had. that's not going to be the case, but I definitely thought that they were going to win, especially last year. They didn't make much changes as to like the roster. Just so happens that a lot of injuries kind of got them. And they got absolutely mantled by the Commanders. That was insane. Also, there was like a hair that's been floating around here. So I had to swipe it off. On top of that, Chiefs could make it. I would like to see Bills, Eagles, Bills, Commanders, anyone but the Chiefs, man. Like, I was a big Patriots, I respected that they would always kind of grind their way in there. I understand that, like, there's going to be some calls that are going to be, there were some calls, especially, like, against the Chiefs that one year in 2018 that got them there. But, yeah, I mean, I like the greatness, but there are some calls against the Chiefs that are pretty rough. That especially on downs that they need to count, interceptions, third and somethings, man, there's always a call. And, like, I get it. There's going to be a few calls, but, man, that rate is a lot higher for the Chiefs. And I would love to see, like, someone go through and find what the percentage of calls comparatively on, like, those very crucial downs have been rewarded to the Chiefs. Technically rewarded to the Chiefs. So from there, obviously MVP awards, Offensive Player of the Year, DPOY, OR, Offensive Rookies, Defensive Rookies, Comeback, and Coach. So I don't know who I said. I think I thought Josh Allen or Joe Burrow was probably going to get MVP. Offensive Player of the Year, Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill on here. Oh, gosh. Breece Hall on here. Oh, gosh. Saquon had a great one. I'm just going to tell you who I think wins it. Okay, so I have MVP as Saquon Barkley. I think Lamar had a great year and a very well-deserving. Josh Allen had a great year, very well-deserving, like a good finalist. I don't think he wins it, though, but I think Saquon wins MVP. Like, he very much carried that team on his back game after game. And so I have him winning that. I have Offensive Player of the Year as Lamar. You could also give that to Josh, but I think it would be very difficult in a world not having Lamar winning something if it wasn't MVP or if it wasn't Offensive Player of the Year. So I gave that to Lamar. Defensive Player of the Year, I gave to Pat Surtain. I know that this is a very defensive tackle type of player, but this is what I would love. I would love if there is like a secondary versus like a linebacker line type Defensive Player of the Year. You know what I'm saying? Like, Kirby Joseph didn't even make the Pro Bowl as one of the best safeties. I mean, yeah, he had a lot of interceptions, maybe gave up a lot of yards, but, like, that's still something to be like, wow, that's insane. Somebody said this, I think Dyson Daniels said this for the Atlanta Hawks, about having, like, a guard, like a 1, 2, maybe 3, and then having a power forward, 5 center being, like, those awards, having 2 separate awards for their position. So I would love to see something like that because it is kind of hard as a cornerback winning it. On top of that, also having a guard win it because obviously their defensive output is a lot different. Like, it's not just like sacks and pressures and tackle for losses. Like, yeah, cornerback could still get those, and obviously defensive linemen really aren't in coverage. Linebackers are kind of depending on the linebacker because some linebackers play down, some play actually as linebackers. So that one is pretty unique. I think splitting those would be nice. I would give it to Trey Hendrickson if that were the case, if it were a lineman. But DPOY, I'm giving to Pat Surtain. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jaden Daniels. I think even Brock Bowers had a great year, and I'm a Raiders fan, but he wins that. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse, not just because his name's Jared, but just because he had a great year. Obviously, he's been played well in the postseason. I thought he's played really well all season. Joe Burrow, he actually suffered a Week 11 injury in his hand, and so he was out for 7 games, so he gets Comeback Player of the Year for me. I think Sam Darnold reviving his career is also up there, in my opinion. There's a lot of people maybe just from like small little injuries that I think could very much win that, but I think Joe Burrow wins that because, he's great and he's talented. And that's kind of the hard part is that, like, a lot of, like, injuries really aren't, like, altering to like their gameplay, like an ACL tear or like an Achilles tear. I know a lot of people maybe had like Aaron Rodgers for that because, the potential of after an Achilles seemed to be moving around decently okay, still throws the ball decently well. So Yeah, Joe Burrow gets that for me. I mean, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks, top 4 right now in the league. And then Coach of the Year, I gave to Dan Quinn. A lot of people could give that to Dan Campbell. A lot of people could give that to Kevin O'Connell. I gave that personally to Dan Quinn because that was a team that and I think many others did not expect to win more than like 5, if not 6 games. But the fact that they won 10, 11, I don't remember how many, but at least more than 10 to make the playoffs, to obviously go into the championship. It is only regular season, so you wouldn't necessarily base it off that, but I think he would win it as a head coach for them. The offensive coordinators there have been great, especially with Cliff. I forget who the defensive coordinator is, but yeah, that is who I have for winning all of these awards. So we'll kind of see how that goes prior to the Super Bowl. So we'll come back to it. My prediction for the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship is that the Bills will beat the Chiefs in a not close game. I think it's going to not be a close game. I think it's going to be like 28 to like 16. I think it's going to be one of those games. I think both teams are going to have the ball for a very long time. I'm really hoping that the Chiefs obviously don't get those penalties to keep the drives alive. That probably will happen. What will realistically happen is that I think that game will be very close, like 27-24. I personally think that it will be like a 30-plus point game for the Bills, 28 even, just depending on like the score and whatnot, 27 too. And then to like a very low, like at most 21 for KC. I think it will be a blowout. And yeah, that's my prediction. Okay, that's my prediction. That's a bold prediction for the NFC Championship game. This is going to be in Philadelphia. It might even snow. It's probably going to be pretty cold. I know the run game and passing game will be looking a lot different because Eagles have a great freaking running back in Saquon, my MVP. I think that the Eagles will win mainly due to the running game. That defense is going to really have to step up for the Commanders. And on top of that, I think the Eagles will win, and so it'll be a Bills-Eagles matchup. I would love to see the Commanders win that. I mean, they've been an underdog, and if I'm wrong, I'm willing to bite that, but I think it will be Bills-Eagles Super Bowl with the Bills winning. I don't know what scores that's going to be. As for all of the other awards, Saquon Lamar, Patrick Surtain, Jaden Daniels, Jared Verse, Joe Burrow, and of course, head coach Dan Quinn. I think that those we'll kind of find out. So in a few episodes from now, I'll kind of mention on who and where and what happened in those award shows. Nonetheless, that is all for today's episode. Thank you guys again so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and comment who you guys think is going to win the Super Bowl. I'm super excited about Kendrick Lamar's performance, which we'll be talking about next episode. Before the Super Bowl, I'm going to give my predictions on who is going to be showing up, what songs he's going to perform, so look forward to that. Thank you guys again so much for watching episode 70 of The Realest Podcast. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next one. 07 and peace. Peace!